AI, I think, is shaking up a lot of industries, particularly in UX design. We're having to think about, okay, how is AI shifting our roles and responsibilities? Not necessarily that I think AI will replace designers, but it does mean that we have to adapt to make sure that we stay relevant in a way that companies don't go ahead and replace us, because all the latest tools, the way they're going is that you can create things a lot faster. You can now generate UIs from prompts, right? How do we work with those things and what do we need to do? And that's how I made the jump to systems thinking. So instead of immediately trying to look for solutions, which I think a lot of us tend to do because we're working on a tight deadline. Adopting a systems thinking mindset just means trying to look at the bigger problem space and involving other stakeholders that you wouldn't necessarily think to involve. Now, you're not just creating visual solutions, but you also, in a way, become a facilitator. You bring different stakeholders within your company together, and maybe you discover different perspectives and solutions that you might not have gotten if you had just jumped into problem solving.
So, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Secrets of the Viz. This week, we're diving into UX UI trends and how some of the learnings from this industry can help us to build better data visualization. So today, I have the honor of inviting Maria, who's an expert in this field, to talk to us a little bit on the various aspects of UX and UI. So over to you, Maria, to do a short intro about yourself.
Thank you very much. So I am Maria. I am a UX UI designer currently living in Switzerland. And I actually come from a background of architecture. So I worked as an architect for 8 years and then decided to pivot my career into UX design. So I've been working a period of transition as a UX designer in startups and now in a bigger corporate for the last 5 years, I guess.
That's a really interesting switch from architecture, you're saying.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a trend like a few years ago. A lot of architects suddenly decided to look into UX design. I guess in my experience, a lot of UX designers actually come from different backgrounds. It's quite rare to come across someone who didn't do something else before.
That's interesting. Are there any transferable skills from architecture you can bring into UX design?
Yes, a lot actually. As an architect, you train to be a designer, essentially. Those design principles are very transferable to another design profession. What I also experienced is architecture is you're designing physical spaces, and then in UX, you go into designing digital spaces. So for me, it was more about learning the different terminologies, but it felt very familiar also.
So let's talk about the first topic I had in mind today, and it's around embracing that system thinking mindset. What do you think has changed in terms of UX and UI trends with the emergence of AI and how we can actually embrace that?
Yeah, so that's a big question, but I'll try to break it down. Yeah, AI, I think, is shaking up a lot of things, not just in UX design, but in lots of industries. We're having to think about, okay, how is AI shifting our landscape? How is it shifting our roles and responsibilities? Not necessarily that I think AI will replace designers, but I think it does mean that we have to adapt. So now I've been following a lot of discourse online about this. What can we do as designers to make sure that we stay relevant in a way that companies don't go ahead and replace us, because all the latest tools, the way they're going is that you can create things a lot faster. You can now generate UIs from prompts, right? How do we work with those things and what do we need to do? And that's how I made the jump to systems thinking. It's a mindset that encourages you to look at when you're faced with a problem that you have to solve and design for. So it means instead of just jumping into design tool to visualize things and immediately trying to look for solutions, which I think a lot of us tend to do because we're working on a tight deadline. Adopting a systems thinking mindset just means trying to look at the bigger problem space and maybe involving other stakeholders that you wouldn't necessarily think to involve when it comes to that problem. Now, you're not just creating visual solutions, but you also, in a way, become a facilitator. You bring different stakeholders within your company together, and maybe you discover different perspectives that you didn't think about, and then you start to get solutions that you might not have gotten if you had just directly jumped into problem solving.
There's a large perspective, definitely, but I think it is very relevant. If I were to reframe this in the theme of data visualization, we often talk about requirements gathering, building for audience persona, and just making sure that we address each and every of their pain points before we jump into solutions. And I think that is very much in line with what you have just described about systems thinking mindset. It's definitely something that it's not just for UX designer, but rather anyone in any field. Like if you have that drive and curiosity to problem solve something, then you're likely going to have a solution that is holistic and embodies everyone's feedback and everything. So I think that's a terrific mindset to have for anything.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Are there any other skills that you think UX designers should start to hone so as to keep on par with whatever AI is able to do? Because it's still a pretty gray area in terms of like creativity.
Yeah. So there are actually two schools of thought here. And one is like we can shift more into this strategic thinking and define what is the overall design strategy here from that perspective. The other one is jumping into the craft of design, because that is still a highly valuable thing when something is so beautifully and thoughtfully designed. And I think AI can't do that probably yet. Maybe in the future it will, but we still bring that honed craft, I think.
That's an interesting thought, because design is something that's often a series of very intentional choices. And speaking of design, there's always this concept of having a system that is reusable, replicable, so that you can build consistency across products that you're building and so on and so forth. In your experience, why do we need a design system, and how do you go about building something for the team?
Yeah, that is an exciting question for me, because that's actually what I'm busy with day to day at work. Design systems make sense just because for every time you have to design something, you don't want to have to go and recreate every button, every text field, things like that. It just makes sense to have a library somewhere that you can just pull from. And what happens a lot of the time is if a company doesn't have a design system or a UI kit, you get like a blue button that's a different shade of blue between different products or different designs. And the original blue is actually lost somewhere and no one remembers what it is. So a design system can really make sure that everyone is working from the same source of truth, but it can also be a strategic thing because it's essentially a product for other products, if I can put it that way. That's why design systems are great and why a lot of companies are actually investing in them. And I think now also with the tools that we have, you can build some pretty powerful design systems. So I'm actually quite excited about how we can use AI tools with that.
Are there any resources that you fall back to for inspiration or reference?
There are a lot of great open source design systems out there that I look at a lot just because they put together these amazing websites which showcase their design system, which give guidelines around how to use it. Some of those are material design from Google. Of course, Apple's human interface guideline is a great one to look at. Some ones that I've been loving lately is ProductWise, the money transfer app. So this is their design system website, and I just love it from the visual style, and it's also pretty well structured and very detailed. I guess another one that I love lately is eBay Playbook.
These are really cool. Like I never knew that
Mm.
companies release their playbook and design style guides. But
Yeah.
it's really interesting. Thank you for giving me
Yeah.
this. I think I have a lot to look at this week and learn from the experts. How long does it take to build something like this from scratch in a very rough estimate?
Good question. It depends on, firstly, how complicated product is, or if there are many products involved. Maybe it's a company that has many different products. It can get quite complicated, but it doesn't have to be, because there are a lot of resources out there that can get you started. You don't always have to start from scratch. You could also grab a ready-made template and just change it to suit your needs. For example, material design from Google, you could take that as a template. It's already available in Figma. And then all you have to do is update the visual language, things like your colors, your typography, button radius, all those kinds of things. It can be really quick, maybe a few weeks. Or if it's quite a complex thing and you have to do like a custom solution, it can take years, because the one I've been working on now has taken like 18 months to put together. But that's because it's serving a lot of different products from different industries.
So the interesting thing about the Google material design is it has evolved quite a bit from the previous minimalistic iteration. And this one, they're going for a very stylized, very loud kind of bold structure, which draws a lot of similarities with the neo-brutalism styling. What are your thoughts about that? Is this a new trend that is coming up in terms of design, or is it a cycle?
That's very interesting that you mentioned that, because Neo-brutalism is almost like an anti-movement to flat design that we've had a lot of in the past few years. Some people think that design systems are to blame for this, but everything looks the same nowadays with small variations, and there's no creativity to it. But every now and then we get this like the anti-movement, which does the opposite. And this could even move into a direction of looking a little bit so exaggerated, but I think that's intentional as well. Trends usually come and go. So I would say this one popped up maybe a couple of years ago, and actually Figma themselves used it in their website. I think we're past that now. We may be entering this new phase of liquid glass that Apple just introduced. I'm not sure.
I saw a lot of videos and articles about, some people love that glass morphism that Apple is doing. Some people hate it. Some people refer it back to the days of Windows Vista, where Microsoft tried to do the same thing, but it didn't work. So I don't know. Maybe it will pick up, because Apple has always proven themselves to be very impactful in moving the needle in the industry. So we'll see. What we can do now is we can shift gears a little bit and talk about your favorite UX in video games. I know you have looked through a couple of these famous games in the past couple of years, and you have a few thoughts about that. So we'll love to dive into that.
Yes. I guess one game that I've put the most hours into is Elden Ring, for sure. And for me, Elden Ring is probably the worst offender of bad UI. It's weird, it's kind of a contradiction, because it does things differently. And this is both what makes the game so amazing and so unforgettable for me, but also a struggle. So it's like, if I can put it this way, I love the game despite its UI. And I think you can see at a glance where the problem is. A lot of it has to do with contrast. Sometimes it's just really hard to read because you have this murky background and then this text. And while I was playing my first time, it's really hard to see like the hints at the bottom that you have those controls telling you what you can do. I'm a console player, so that probably also adds to it that I'm a little bit further away from the screen. But also, I'm a person that usually gets overwhelmed if something that I'm looking at demands a high cognitive load. So there's a lot of information on the screen. I might not always know what to look at immediately, and Elden Ring's menus tend to do that a lot.
That makes a lot of sense. Any part of the user interface that you thought was okay and not too bad?
Yeah, it's not all bad. I mean, I love the overall art style that it has, the art direction, things like that. I just wish that I could somehow change the font size bigger, there to be more contrast, because actually a lot of modern games do offer this ability to change the UI to your own preference, or if you have a visual impairment. I think Horizon Forbidden West has a lot of accessibility settings. So I think players appreciate those kinds of things.
I think that is also one of the key differences between playing on a PC and console.
Yes.
Because like I said, the console, you're sitting a little bit of distance from the screen. So the texts are definitely looking a lot smaller than what you see. And for PC, you can actually adjust the resolution of your screen so that it appears bigger or smaller.
True.
That's the advantage PC gamers have.
One of the things I love is when you're in the gameplay, the HUD, it's kept quite minimal. This is actually one of the things that the game does differently to other games. It does not have a lot of information on the screen. So there's no quest log, checklist of things you have to do. There's that minimal compass, but it doesn't show you where to go, really. And this is very immersive. This is what they were going for, which I think it does really well, actually.
I think you raised a very important point because I played a game called World of Warcraft for many, many years. It's a MMORPG, which means it's a massive online game that can have millions of players. So there is that aspect of immersion within the world itself. You're controlling a character that you customize, build, and just travel the world, kill enemies and stuff like that. But I always felt that it's so overwhelming of the amount of information that is being put to you on the screen. So there's usually a quest log. And in the earlier versions of the game, you couldn't actually collapse the quest log. So if you took on 20 quests, you'd see maybe about 10 and then 3 dots to signify that there's more in the list, but you can't actually scroll it. And it gets worse when you're in a party of 20 to 40 people. There's the animations that is playing for each of the characters. There's numbers flying all over the screen, and the particle effects just basically blind you from seeing. So boss fights were always a mess. I used to run a guild, and we would have voice chat with the entire raid, and we use voice to actually direct people to go where we want them to go instead of relying on the game, which is what we're supposed to do.
I haven't played World of Warcraft myself, but I've watched it on stream a lot. And I am so confused by the UI still. I have not figured it out. I have no idea where to look. And to me, that's kind of an example of UI causing friction, what you just described, almost preventing you from doing what you want to do. And then you have to have a workaround to do it.
The good thing is they always had the customization available for the players, so anyone could create a custom mod that changes how your UI looks like. So people download the entirely different UI for if you're playing a healer versus if you're playing a damage class and stuff like that.
Yes, people always find a way to play the games they love.
What would be your favorite UX in video games?
It's hard to pick just one. Lately, it's been Clair Obscur, Expedition 33.
Ooh, I love that game. I love that game so much.
Awesome game. I think it does pretty much everything like so well. I didn't have to Google things to figure out what to do because the tutorials are good. It onboards you really well and gets you going with the game. I know people had a few issues here and there, like for example, when your character is attacking and there's a square that loads to tell you when to hit the button to do the attack. It took me like a few tries to actually work out what's going on. But I think once you figure it out, it feels really great.
It's a very challenging game as well. I mean, you
Yes.
coming from Elden Rings probably gives you a little bit more advantage because there's an element within the game that you can actually parry whatever the enemy hits you with. And if you parry it correctly, you can actually trigger a counter attack to hit back.
Yeah,
But
what's cool is it also gives you an option to just dodge, I think. So if you can't get the parry because the window is really unforgiving, you can dodge instead. So I love that it gives you two options depending on your play style. It's a great game.
yeah, for me, it's definitely the game of the year.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see any other games clinching that title, but you never know.
You never know. Death Stranding 2 just
Mhm.
came out, and I love the concept. Again, it's a game I love despite its bad UI. It's another busy user interface that you really have to spend a bit of time getting used to. It's improved in the
Yeah.
second one, luckily. In the second one, you can also do these like cinematic camera views, so there's no UI at all, which is also kind of cool. But this menu in particular is really
Ooh,
confusing to me,
it's a lot of things happening here.
right? You have no idea where to look. Where is the main action? I'm not sure. And your eye is drawn to the red and the orange there at the bottom. But if
Mhm.
I remember correctly, then you can't do anything with that. It's just info.
So I think we have everything we need for the podcast. But thank you so much, Maria, for spending time with us today to talk about all things UI and UX. And I think a lot of folks can learn key concepts of what you've introduced to us in this episode to bring into their daily design work or even data visualization on the whole. So thank you again for sharing your knowledge. And we'll see everyone at the next episode. Thank you.